would you like to add to that? And I also have another question to being that Dr. Laurent has mentioned the two um, uh, companies that has the vaccine with Pfizer and Moderna. Will you also explain, because I see that there is a lot of hesitancy thinking that there are two different forms of the vaccine. And so why are there two different companies with the vaccine, just in case there is some questions regarding who holds the vaccine?
Correct. So I do agree with everything she just said about the new guidelines. The most important key points to take away from that were asymptomatic, exposure to somebody after you're fully vaccinated. So that's both doses, 2 weeks after, when those vaccines are at their fullest, effectiveness. So when you reach that 95% at preventing, symptoms and that kind of thing. Now, without symptoms, if you have symptoms, you need to contact your healthcare provider for sure. In regards to the two different vaccines that are currently available in Arkansas, like you mentioned, there's Pfizer and there's Moderna. They're both mRNA-based vaccines. So, I meet a lot of people every day. I've given thousands of vaccines over the course of 2 months, and I love to use analogies when I'm trying to explain things to people, because it kind of hits home, especially when you're talking about mRNA and RNA and DNA vaccines, adenovirus vectors, this and that. It can become very confusing, especially to people that, haven't been through the education and training that healthcare professionals have. So my best analogy that I have currently that I've been using quite a bit is how I explained to my grandfather. The two vaccines we currently have are both 95% effective. You know how GMC makes a Sierra truck and Chevy makes a Silverado truck? They're pretty much the same truck. There's just a different logo on the outside of them. Both vaccines, the internal mechanisms of the vaccines work the exact same. The packaging of the vaccine is slightly different. It's pegylation difference in between the two. And it's just how they hold those nanoparticles together. The mRNA molecules are very sensitive, so they have to hold those together, and that's how they do it. And that's really the slightest only difference, is one has a little bit more pegylation than the other. But other than that, they're both very, very effective. And I encourage everybody to get the first one that's available to them. I would not delay to wait to get one or the other.
Dr. Raj, one of the questions that were submitted was regarding distribution. Being that you have an extensive background studying inequities in the healthcare system, is there any factual information that could support that there are inequities in how the vaccine is being distributed?
First of all, I would like to thank everyone for allowing this opportunity to talk to you about it. And inequity is pretty much, they're almost all levels, all stages, right? That's one of the reasons why we are doing what we are doing. But the current administration is probably trying their best to increase partnerships. The partnerships are who we are. It takes almost, in this case, a state to vaccinate people, right? We have a lot of people that are anti-vax. We have people that are hesitant for this particular vaccine because it may be new technology. It may be because of everything is political these days, right? A lot of misinformation in Facebook, and simple information cannot usually get across. A forum like this usually helps because we are like-minded. All we want is to make sure we have safe and healthy people. At the end of the day, we want to go to work like we used to before 2019, isn't it? So that's pretty much what it is. But what I'm excited about for this particular vaccine is, as a scientist, I'm always excited about new things. This vaccine platform is going to become a thing of the future because it can be mass produced much sooner. What it contains, it doesn't contain a live virus or attenuated virus. So it cannot give you COVID-19, right? So people are hesitant because maybe I get COVID from this. No, you don't, because it doesn't contain COVID. But what it does is it just gives you instructions, right? You get a shot in the arm, it tells you to make a protein that kind of makes your body believe that you have COVID, meaning because it contains message to make spike protein. The spike is on the outside of the coronavirus. So our body reacts to it. That's one of the reasons why people have adverse reaction. They may get a headache, few chills, but nothing that you cannot deal with. COVID is tough to deal with, right? So this just primes you, prepares you. If you get the 2 doses in the appropriate amount of time, you get fully vaccinated, it prepares you to combat the disease when it hits you, right? So that's the part of the hesitancy that's coming in, right? The second thing is we need to probably partnership with organizations like AKA, community, churches, especially in the Delta region. Churches make huge contributions. Make that partnership. And I was so glad to hear Dr. Delaney make those phone calls. If it takes that, we have to do this, right? And we need our herd to protect us, not just us taking those vaccines when it's available to us. We need 75% at least to get this vaccine. It's good to have the goals like, oh, I'm going to vaccinate 2 million people a day, 3 million people a day. But after some time, you hit a point where you have more vaccines, but you need people to take them. So that's exactly when you can be that ambassador. Not only you take it, but tell your neighbors. Tell people, if you're eligible, please do take it. And the analogy that Dr. Delaney gave was amazing. You know, it's just the label is different, but the vaccine platform is exactly the same. It's just fatty soap-like molecule that protects this message. The message gives you that information that, you know, like you can make this spike protein. But this message is almost like burn after eating kind of thing. It goes away after some time. So that's why you need the second dose, isn't it? So some vaccines that are coming up like J&J, you may need only one dose. But my main message is going to be just, if it is available to you, take it. And it is safe. And in this time that we have, all the three of us and every one of us will try to convince each other that it is safe and effective for all communities everywhere here. But there is this question of the COVID variants, which we may talk about later. That's one of the reasons why we have to take it sooner rather than later, right? So with that, I will just defer the rest of it to my panelists and everyone else on the call.
Can I just add, perhaps people don't know this, Dr. I think it's Kizit Corbett is a Black scientist who was leading in the development of the mRNA technology for this vaccine. And so it's always important just to see who's in the forefront, especially as BIPOC communities are having hesitancy based on historical experiences with the healthcare profession or the sciences. And I just wanted to acknowledge that accomplishment as well.
Indeed. Thank you for referencing that, Dr. Laurent. Thank you for the wealth of information that's already been shared. I'm so glad this is being recorded. So I can go back and review it. Thank you for that. The next question I have, since we are talking again about just promoting taking the vaccine, one of the questions that has been out there is, can you contract COVID-19 from the vaccination? So being that all of you all, I think I'm just going to stop calling names and say, hey, whoever wants to jump in first, because all of you all can definitely answer this question.
Yeah, and Dr. Raj actually just alluded to that as well. So the vaccine does not make you sick. What people sometimes may be referring to is the response our bodies make once we are injected with the vaccine, which is our body ramping up like an immune system saying, this is your drill. So your body is going through this drill to say, if you were to see this enemy called COVID, the SARS-CoV virus, right? If you're to see this, this is what you need to do. So some people, after getting a vaccine, most common side effect that the person may experience are some soreness or redness around the skin, or they may experience some fatigue. There are some people experiencing low-grade fatigue, low-grade fevers, or feeling really tired or feeling exhausted. There have been some studies to show that after the second dose, that people may feel most of these side effects. And it's so important to have these very transparent, open conversations. And you want to, and the context is side effects from a vaccine or really being laid out in a hospital, having all the organs in your body shut down because of this virus, right? You got to contextualize these things. And it's a wide range. And when they have a list of all these symptoms, it doesn't mean you're going to get it all. They're just reporting what everybody might have, what the reports has been. So I took the vaccine. I just had tenderness in my arm, first and second shot. Like I was fine. I just went along my day. Other people felt more exhausted and tired. So you have to contextualize that. So no, you're not putting the virus in the body. I really appreciate Dr. Laney's analogy. I think is really helpful. I also call it like they're like instructions going inside of your cells telling you this is what you need to do when you see this enemy. And then your body revs up and ready to respond to that. So no, people may feel some side effects from it. Very, very few cases, like 11, and as of December, per 1 million had an allergic reaction to this. No one has ever reportedly have been proven to there's been death directly correlated or connected to the COVID-19 vaccines that we have right now. But certainly we have more numbers that have died from the virus itself.
So I do want to add on to what she was just talking about there.
Sure.
Due to, me vaccinating so many people every day. Like today, I think I vaccinated over 200 people today. So, this conversation happens every time, first dose and second dose. I've almost to the point where I avoid the word side effect or symptom. I just call it immune response. And I tell them, like was just mentioned, soreness in the arm, dull headache on the first dose. The second dose is when you could, potentially see that stronger immune response. I always just say immune response because that's your body naturally building that immunity. And I always tell people it's kind of like, God just showing you it's working. Okay. That's just how it is. Doesn't really last longer than 48 hours. It's a natural response to that vaccine. And then it just kind of dissipates and goes away. And the worst I've heard from anybody that's gotten the vaccine with us, and we've, again, given a bunch of vaccine, is just low-grade fevers, muscle aches, fatigue on that second dose. And that's really it. And I've only spoken to one person that lasted 72 hours and then it stopped. So, the strangest, this one kind of seems like a symptom or a side effect of the vaccine that I've heard from about 10 or 15 people. So it's very insignificant, is a metallic taste in your mouth. And sometimes you can see that even with viral infections. I think it's just part of your immune system ramping up anyway. And you can kind of see that. And some patients have seen that for 5 or 6 days. So if you see that, that is just, and it goes away. Everybody, I followed up with them, make sure that, nothing's strange there so I could report it. It's always went away. So if you see that, that may be a random side effect that's very, low incidence of, but there have been some reports of that. So don't kind of, freak out if you see that. I just wanted to make sure that I kind of mentioned the immune response thing. It's a very natural reaction.
Awesome. Thank you. And I can attest for the second dose, a natural immune response terminology. Got it. Thank you. So Dr. Raj, is the current vaccine, are children eligible? And if they are eligible, are there age guidelines to receiving the vaccine?
That's actually an excellent question, right? Because, most of the time, whenever there is a vaccine eligibility, you want to see whether I can protect my kids with it, right? So right now, based on the clinical trial data with Pfizer and Moderna, 16 or 18 and above are the ones that are in the trial. So we have data from only those groups. So what happens is FDA looks at the data, they approve it, and then the ACIP, the Advisory Committee for Immunization Practices, they look at the data and they recommend for that particular group. That's one of the main reasons why we have this vaccines available only for 16 or 18 and above. Right now, as we speak, these trials are going on. So kids will be eligible soon using the same vaccine, but not yet, right? But one thing I would like to add to the previous question is that, yes, it's the same kind of mRNA vaccine, but the dosing is slightly different. So that's one of the reasons why we can't interchange those doses. So if you get Pfizer as a first dose, please make sure you get Pfizer as a second dose. So that's one of the things I wanted to add, but children will be getting this vaccine soon. How soon? It's up to the regulatory agencies. They have to look at the data and then they have to approve it.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And after receiving the vaccine and becoming fully vaccinated, receiving both doses, does that make you immune from the COVID-19 virus? Dr. Laurent, would you like to start?
Yeah, so as I said earlier, right now we're looking for data in terms of transmission, right? Is it going to keep me from getting it, so to speak, if I get vaccinated, or give it to someone if I'm what they call an asymptomatic infected person, meaning I don't have symptoms, but I have COVID-19. So I have the virus that causes COVID-19. So at this time, we do not know of that transmission, but we do know that it does decrease severity of illness to the point of death. and also to the point of death. And there already we're seeing data to see that the effect of the vaccine is being effective that way. So you can potentially still acquire the virus, may not manifest the symptoms, which is what the vaccine is supposed to do, keep you from manifesting a severe form of the illness that could lead to death. But you still can do it, which is why we are still encouraging people to social distance, wash your hands, wear your mask, even after you do get vaccinated. We still have a lot to learn about this transmission. There's still data that's out there to see that if I get vaccinated, doesn't mean that'll keep me from getting it altogether. We're still waiting to see what the outcome is on that. If my fellow scientists will tell me if there's new updates as of today, he'll be sure to add to that. But yeah, we still got to be safe after you're vaccinated. Put the mask on, avoid crowds. I don't step into heavy crowds or rooms of people, especially if they're not vaccinated, especially if they're not socially distanced. I even with me being fully vaccinated, because I'm concerned about spreading to folks who have not yet been vaccinated at this point. So I do have to be cautious.
So I would like to piggyback off that. I'm a half glass full kind of person. So there is, and like you mentioned, there's not any great data showing, the transmission is reduced. But there is one study, and it's inside the original study from Moderna. And you may have heard about this, but they essentially tracked from the first to second dose asymptomatic transmission, and they found that there was a decrease of 67%. So that's not bad. I mean, and that's from the first to second dose. Again, they weren't spending a ton of time trying to figure out if it decreased transmission or not. They're really just figuring out, hey, is this going to stop people from going to the hospital and dying? Because really, at the end of the day, that's what we need to stop, because the decreased amount of stress in the hospitals, we can much better take care of our patients. But at the end of the day, there is that glimmer of hope with that data there showing that there is a decrease of 67% of asymptomatic transmission. So that is good to see for sure. And but we'll see. I'm sure they're looking into that every day. All the companies are, because whatever company can say that is their claim to fame will jump on that as soon as they can if they get that data, for sure.
Great, awesome. As a follow-up to safety, is it safe for pregnant or nursing women to receive the vaccine?
I can speak to that too, and then anybody can jump on that as well. So
Awesome.
my wife's currently breastfeeding. She's also an educator. She's a math professor at Williams Baptist University, and she got her vaccine as soon as she could. I did a lot of reading from a lot of OB/GYN journals and that kind of thing. They have found no reason not to get it. So I encourage people that are breastfeeding or pregnant to go ahead and get it. It was not studied in those populations, but there have been animal studies for pregnant animals. If this makes you feel any better, and they haven't found any kind of risk there. But I do believe it's encouraged. I encourage pregnant people and breastfeeding mothers to go ahead and get that vaccine. Certainly, because this is the way it works. I mean, the mRNA technology with the two vaccines it's amazing. I mean, really, it's just a ball of butter with an mRNA molecule in it. It goes into the cell, it sticks around for like 2 or 3 days, and it's gone. I mean, it's incredible the way it works. So I'm encouraging everybody and it's on the check form. Like, it asks if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, so we can bring that up and just say, hey, it wasn't studied, but pretty much the healthcare community is recommending it across the board. So that's where we're at right now at the pharmacy side.
I would like the other doctors to join in if they have something to add to this, but I just would like to say, Dr. Delaney, I love your analogies. They are so on point. So thank you. But please, Dr. Raj or Dr. Laurent, would you like to add to the question?
Yes, I would. Like when WHO came up with a recommendation saying that if you're pregnant, maybe you should watch out, then immediately the American College of OB/GYN came up with a statement right away saying, no, wait a minute, we want everybody to get vaccinated, irrespective of your pregnancy status. That says something about it, because when somebody is making a recommendation, they're looking at global picture of what's going on, right? So in the US right now, we are still in various hot zones of COVID active transmission. So the risk outweighs, the benefit in those cases where they recommend otherwise, right? So that's one of the reasons why they did that. But the other thing I will tell us, as you were talking previously about, like the data that we have, what kind of recommendation about safety and everything else. We started vaccinating more widely in December 14th. It's only like we are not even 90 days across that thing, right? So, and we are talking about like the future of like what's going to happen and everything else. Come November, we weren't really thinking about even, do we have a vaccine? The questions are different. Now we are talking about more fine-tuning our questions towards that. 160 million people were vaccinated globally. 14 million Americans were vaccinated. In Arkansas, we are proud to say that, like 10.5% received like first doses. These are amazing numbers. And this vaccine just came to us December 14th, and we are already doing a great job. When it's people like Dr. Laurent, Dr. Delaney, they are in the boots on the ground delivering those vaccines. And that's one of the things that we need. We need all of us, like we need all those nurses, doctors, healthcare providers, everybody who can deliver these vaccines, please deliver. Rest of us, we can boost this message so that more people line up and then get those vaccines, isn't it?
Awesome. And I know this discussion is to encourage everyone to receive the vaccine,